Welcome, folks. I'm Fred McMurray with Ray Pillar, and it's time for another episode of Pillar's Principles. We've been exploring the 17 questions you need to ask yourself before you start a business. Last time we covered how will I set up the legal structure and what it should be. So today we're going to talk about the one thing that affects everybody in their business life, and no, it's not death. It's taxes. So, Ray, what kind of taxes do I need to pay? Is it like my job that people just take stuff out, or tell us?
Well, one of the things, first of all, I am not a tax expert. Okay.
Just a business expert.
Yes. Okay. But as we discussed on the last episode, it does depend on how you set up, subchapter S or C corp or what. Some of that is dependent on that. As far as taxes are concerned on the corporation, I'm a subchapter S. I pay through my weekly paycheck on what the company makes. So that's a little surprising. But then as far as what taxes you will be paying, you besides yourself paying taxes on yourself as the owner, any employees you have to if you don't 1099 them, and that may be a foreign concept. In other words, 1099 means that you're telling them they're an independent employee, not your employee. If you don't do that, then they are your employee, then you have to pay taxes on them. And the one thing you don't want to do is not do that, because it can multiply really quickly. And before you know it, you're in deep doo-doo.
Right. So let's uncork this a bit, or unpack this a bit, because you hit a whole lot of stuff there. So as a subchapter S, it sounds like you pay yourself a salary and
Yes.
you pay taxes on that. Okay. So I know with an LLC, you don't necessarily have to pay yourself a salary. Everything's passed through. So the revenue or taxes on an LLC is based on the income you take as the owner. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So with you as a subchapter S, you're paying yourself a salary. So you're paying things like FICA, unemployment tax, state tax, local tax,
Yes.
federal tax, and bureaucrat tax.
Yeah.
It's every any cent they can take. All right. So you hit another phrase, 1099 form.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are regular employees that are you said your employees, and they're 1099 employees. So explain a bit more about 1099.
Well, if you subcontract, that's usually considered subcontract an employee that work for you, then that's usually a 1099, as I understand it. Now, my contract with my franchise forbids that. So everyone who works for me has to work for me directly. They don't work for the franchise, and or any other. Now, not to say there isn't a company out there that actually rents out their employees, which is a whole nother issue, which we don't have time to get into. But there is a ton of taxes that need to be paid, and you need to keep on top of it, whatever you do, because, like I say, it can snowball rather quickly if you don't.
Okay, so with the 1099s, so what you said is the employees, if they're not 1099, yours are either full or part-time, and you're paying all the taxes on them. So
Yes.
you're paying your share of the FICA, unemployment
Yes.
tax, all that
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
With a 1099 employee, they don't have their own EIN number or federal.
They have their own social security number,
but not a tax ID. So
right.
literally, they are individuals who are subcontracting.
Mhm.
I seem to remember at one point there are rules around 1099 folks that uh, you uh, you can tell a 1099 employee, in order to be a 1099 employee, you can't have them. They have to have their own like computer equipment, their own.
Yeah, there's some specific rules because obviously there are some employment people who want to use that not to pay taxes.
Mhm.
So yes, there are some specific rules that the IRS will look at, and it's probably best to avoid it. There is one thing I do want to mention strongly is that hire a tax accountant. It's so complicated. A tax accountant, that's all they do is study the rules that change throughout the year. Things change, and you cannot keep up with it and try to run your business at the same time. It's pretty much impossible. So I've had a tax accountant from the very beginning, and basically I've told my tax accountant, your job is to keep me out of jail.
And
Not
that
that I'm cheating. In other words, to make sure I'm not cheating accidentally.
right, because as you said, the laws change, and
Right.
ignorance of the laws, um, no excuse. So to put the 1099 thing to bed, eh, if somebody doesn't make the vast majority or the majority of their revenue from you, then they could be considered 1099 is a simple way to look at it.
That sounds correct. Like I say, I'm not an expert in that area.
That's what I seem to remember, is that as long as you're not the primary revenue source for them, in other words, they have other clients, then they truly are 1099. All right, Ray. On the question of tax,
One other thing, though, that the government does require you to report those people.
Mhm.
So just be aware of that. If you fail to report them, then you can end up in trouble as well. So any person that you are paying with a 1099 needs to be reported. And there's a specific form called a 1099 for that.
So if you're, this just gave me interest, saying that. So if you're paying somebody in dollars or currency, you have to report that. However, if you're paying them in like food, do you have to report it?
Food for thought.
Food for thought.
or nourishment for the body.
On that comment, which did what I wanted it to do. Any final thoughts on taxes and or death?
Yes, don't try to cheat it. Don't try to cheat the system. Yeah, because Uncle Sam will find you.
Amen to that. We'll be back again next week, folks, with another episode of Pillars Principles and the current topic of top 17 questions to ask yourself before starting a business.